Mr. Speaker, first of all, thank you for joining us. Let's talk about some of these specifics because, yes, you have put a committee in place to look at severing the ties between the federal government and their funding of our state schools because of just these types of strings that are attached. We get roughly $1.8 billion from the federal government. Right now, is there any requirements that are currently attached to that money?
Yes, there are. And the Sycamore Institute just came out and said it's more like $1.1 billion. So it's decreased by $700 million because it was inflated due to COVID dollars. But there are strings attached. There's things there's testing. There's things that we can't do with that money, whether it's in the school lunch program. The way I look at it is we have a contract with the federal government, and we should go back on a regular basis and look in that contract. But what happens with the federal government as well, simply when you take the money, they give you a new contract and they say you have to do these things. In Missouri, I was talking to someone who's representing Missouri, and their COVID dollars, they put in their COVID dollars that they had to do social emotional learning in their schools. If you remember Race to the Top, when the Democrats were in control, they did Race to the Top. And guess what that brought us? That brought us Common Core because we took the money. So there's always strings attached. And I think it's our due diligence that we should look into it and see everything that it's required, whether it's through Title IX, which is where President Biden was trying to put in playing sports based on your gender identity. He finally pulled back on it. But something like that, you would have to do simply because you take federal money.
So $1.1 billion, of course, it sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But let's just say for the sake of this discussion, Speaker Cameron Sexton, that we do reject those dollars and we're cutting those strings as well. Will this have an impact on students?
Well, it will. You know, the $1.1 billion, as the Sycamore Institute has said that it is, we do have over a $2 billion surplus. We do have the funding to replace it. You know, the interesting thing is the left, whenever they go hysterical about just having hearings, it tells you that you're kind of onto something about their motives and about how they're trying to influence our school systems in our state. The money does go to special needs. It goes to school lunch. It goes to a lot of things. It doesn't go into the classroom per se for teaching. It does some other things that we're going to continue to do. And there's a lot of misinformation about we're going to cut this and we're going to cut that. That's not true. But you also have to think that maybe the state can provide those services that are at a better ability than the federal government is trying to dictate to us.
You've got, of course, Democrats, and you just said, you know, the left is going hysterical over this. Although, you know, to your credit, you have some Democrats on this panel exploring all of this. But, you know, we do have thousands of openings for teachers across the state. We need something like $9 billion in renovations and infrastructure upgrades. We need some new schools across the state as well. So will this ultimately impact the state and our ability to teach the kids and not have the ability to upgrade the infrastructure and so forth?
No, I think you can do both, but the number one thing that our job is, or one of the top, you know, safety and security is one of them, is to provide a quality K through 12 education and make sure that when the students graduate 12th grade, that they have the ability and the opportunity to have a job. And you hear from businesses all the time about not having the soft skills, or when you hear from colleges or universities or community colleges that the number one course after high school that someone has to take is a remedial course. And so we're not functioning well. Is it because of the federal government? They're partly to blame for that because they're trying to indoctrinate or to pass things down into our schools that have us teach. I think that it's the state's duty to be in control of K through 12. And I don't think that simply taking federal money and them dictating to us how they want us to teach the same way here as they want us to do in California is not the right way to go. So I think it's an important thing to look at. We can continue to fund a lot of stuff, but if we have a workforce that's able to meet the demands of the jobs that are coming into our state, we will win long term.
Well, and you bring up a great point in that we've got testing scores that are not great. We've got 39% of our public school students are proficient in English, 34% are proficient in math. You know, frankly, not great scores. So if I'm hearing you right, if we actually eliminate the strings, we're sort of getting rid of what we call in radio the clutter, and you're really focusing on the topics or the issues or the lessons that matter, it is possible that those scores would go up. Now, Republicans have a supermajority in the House, and the Senate seems to be on board with this, and Governor Lee actually seems open to this as well. How big of a fight do you believe that this will be politically, trying to cut ties with the federal government with $1.1 billion in funding and cutting the strings as well?
I don't think it's a fight within the Republican Party. I think the fight will be with the Democrat Party. I think the fight will be with the Department of Education at the federal level, and the fight will be with President Biden, because they've all come out simply because we want to have a discussion. And so when you see the left coming out and saying, you've got to take the money, you have to take the money, it's stupid not to take the money because it's our tax dollars coming back to us. Well, think about this. This year, the federal government was in $1.7 trillion deficit, $33 trillion overall, but this year, $1.7 trillion. That's over $1 billion of Tennessee debt per capita. And so the way to look at that is we're not getting our revenue back. What we're getting back is debt from the federal government. And then the question is, are we better prepared to teach our kids, or should the federal government be telling us how to teach our kids? But we should also look when those monies come down. When I've talked to school systems and to teachers, there's things that are required of them that increase the cost of taking that money. So it's not like it's just you get $1.1 billion and it's free and clear. You have to hire individuals. You have to do other things.
Yep.
And so that cost to us is more. And so we need to dive into that as well.
Mr. Speaker, of course, Justin Jones is now suing you in federal court over his expulsion. He's saying that he is being unconstitutionally silenced. He said this on Joy Reid's program a couple of weeks ago. Listen.
The actions and the conduct of Speaker Cameron Sexton as unconstitutional and illegal. It's about upholding the right to express views under the First Amendment. It's about due process, because even during the expulsion, we saw a kangaroo court, as you and people across America saw, a court that was rigged and that was about silencing the two youngest black lawmakers.
Now, I have stated my opinion on the two Justins and Gloria Johnson many, many times. People know how I feel. I don't need to regurgitate that. It's not a positive thing. But he is saying that he's being unconstitutionally silenced. Let me ask you, I don't know if you can say much about this lawsuit, but have you and Jones had any discussion in the off time? What plans are there coming up in January to be able to keep order as you prepare for the next session?
No, I haven't had any conversations with him. Look, the state constitution gives the General Assembly the ability to set their rules, and that's constitutional. And so people can argue what they want. What I will tell you is what I find fascinating in the hypocrisy of it all is you had Bernie Sanders a few weeks ago who had someone outside of his office holding a sign in the hallway, and they walk out and handcuff them and remove them, and those individuals are silent. You had people who were protesting at the Capitol in the Rotunda. Once again, they got removed and handcuffed and removed, and those people were silent because it was their party asking them to be removed. And so, look, everybody knows when you go to the Capitol in Washington and you want to sit in a balcony, and you saw that whenever they were going through the numerous votes, they were not allowed to bring in signs. They were not allowed to bring in cell phones. They were not allowed to make noise and scream and shout in the Capitol during session. And so you look at the hypocrisy of it, and it's just more about making news, in my opinion. We'll see what happens with the lawsuit, but it's more about making news and playing the victim card, which I think he's really good at.